Here we are again, folks. Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. When was the last time you asked yourself or thought about, what is my purpose in life? Why am I here? Why did God put me here? What was my childhood all about? Was it learning how to prepare for my older age? Was it learning how to prepare in the middle years when I'd be working, maybe getting married, raising a family, or what? And then when I get to my later years to figure out again, what is my purpose in life? I'm sure that I asked myself when I was young, what was my purpose in life? And I do remember doing that. And then again in my middle years, I do remember that. And now here I am, 77, and what is my purpose in life? It's the same thing it was in life when I was in my middle years. And that is to present God as in real to other people. One of the most persistent questions is that I've asked myself through life, in my mind, both as a youth and adult, was that purpose in life. Am I fulfilling it? Am I doing what I'm supposed to? In order to understand why God made us and what His will is for our lives, it's essential. It's essential to know the ways and the challenges of God. You say, well, you're reading that. Yes, I have it written down. If you don't write things down, you don't have them. So you need to know and study. And I've been studying all day today, my whole day. This is afternoon. What time is it? It's 1 something, almost 2 o'clock, and I've been studying since early this morning. And now that I've opened up the tube and fixing to put something on. And I talked about my purpose in life, both of birth of a vision. When do you get birth to vision? I had visions all the time when I was young. I cut firewood and split firewood. I had a vision of Abraham Lincoln splitting rails because I had studied him. He was a rail splitter, and I had studied him. And here I was just splitting firewood, but thinking about how splitting a rail would be fun. And he used to take a log and he could split it into 6 or 7 or 8 pieces, the whole length of it, and make fence rails out of it, and they stacked them like this all the way down around the property. And so I knew there was a purpose in life, but my purpose, I was not put here to split rails. I was not put here to split firewood. God would reveal to me as time goes on in my life exactly what the illustrations were that He wanted me to follow, and not just the things that I was doing, but the spiritual. So I had a good vision, and all of a sudden it got dashed, and here came the death of that vision. I had vision some days of going out on top of the snow on the crust and hunting pheasants and hunting ermines and doing things. I was up north, going up north, and I lived, and I'd get up the next day and there'd be a brand new layer of snow. The snow would be coming down. There wasn't no going hunting that day. So my vision was gone that day. My expectations were very powerful the day before. But when I get up that morning, the motivation is gone now. And what do I have? I have a little drop of discouragement right there. And so to get over that, I had to usually find that the expectation that I had could be replaced in ways that I never would have thought. In lots of ways, the expectation. In this particular thing, thinking about going hunting and the snow's falling and everything, to go out there in the day and hold your hands out in the snow, and you tip your head out and put your tongue out like that and get the snowflakes on your tongue. And then you lay down in the fresh snow and you wave your arms like this and you make an angel. You say, well, Brother Peter, you're talking about things that sound a little bit foolish. Well, when you're a child, those are childish things. Those are things you do when you're a child. And you remember them vividly when you get older. It seems like the older you get, the more you go back into childhood. if it happened to start snowing out here right now today in Georgia, I'd be out there making me an angel in the snow at 77 years old. And so, look, Abraham had a vision. And he had a vision of being a father. And perhaps someday being the leader of a great nation. God had revealed to him that he was going to be something. But Sarah was barren. She couldn't have a child. You remember that? And then, so God gave Abraham and Sarah a son in their old age. And in their dreams. And they never would have ever believed that they could have a child. And he would be the father. Abraham would be the father of a great nation. And Isaac would be the leader of that nation. Then we come to Joseph. Joseph was a young man in his family, the youngest. Had a vision that that he would be a great leader. And he had that vision. And that it would many would bow down to him. You remember he came to his brothers and he told them that story. They weren't very happy about that. That his brothers would bow down to him. Now, I think he might not have should have told them that story, but he had that vision. And they did, remember, in Egypt, several years later, lots of years later, they bowed down to him. So Joseph's brothers sold him as a merchant. And then later he was freely accused and condemned and spent some years in prison. Wow. Don't you think that vision he had over here of his brothers bowing down when he was in prison, that he thought about that vision? He said, I don't know about that vision, but I had it, so it may be going to come true. Well, God allows Joseph to interpret the dream of the butler and the baker, and later the king, whereupon he was made a ruler of the land. You know, isn't it amazing that he couldn't interpret his own dream where his brothers bowed down to him, but he could interpret the dream of the butcher and the baker, and he could determine the dream of the Pharaoh. Isn't that something, that he could do that? So, let's look at Moses. Wow, here's another one of God's chosen people. Put out there in a basket when he's just a baby crying. And the way God worked that out, so the very mother that birthed Moses could give him suck on her breast and her milk, which he was supposed to be drinking. Isn't that something? And he never ever in his life would ever thought he'd be the leader of the people of Egypt. And nobody else did either. So Pharaoh, as well as his own people, drove Moses out of Egypt. Wow. He was a leader under Pharaoh. Everything he said held water. And then here he is in the middle of this vision that he had of him originally after the attempt to relieve their bondage. Now, God gave Moses signs and wonders and convinced Pharaoh and his people that God was speaking through him to lead the nation of Canaan. Some time lapsed between all of these that I'm talking about. Every single one of them I'm talking about, just like you and I, there was a time lapse. A pretty good sized time lapse. And then God came through. But during that time lapse in the middle, there was a little bit of a depression. There was a little bit of, I had a vision. What happened to it? I still got it. I still got the vision. I'm 77, but I still got the vision of the camp at our church. I still have a vision that I've had for years. Still have it. And it's here. So the disciples of Jesus had a vision too. Established, being the kingdom. Jesus talked about being the kingdom of God and how it was going to be. But then Jesus was killed by his very own that he came to save. And the disciples saw him buried. Wow. Don't you know this vision Jesus gave them over here? how they were going to be through him something, and he sees them die over here. They hadn't come to fruition yet. Now, the end of it is God raised Jesus from the dead, and the great miracle was performed. Wow. And by the disciples until the gospel had spread throughout all the world. They had to wait till the day of Pentecost, 50 days after Jesus went to the cross. And then their vision became fact. And they saw it. Let's look at again the grain of wheat. Has a vision of reproducing itself and many more grains of wheat. One little grain of wheat. Now look at the grain dies. And the root in the ground dies. The grain dies. It is important for the grain to die in order to dry up, that it can plant it and it can grow more wheat. And that's the way you and I are. We need to die to ourselves so that we can serve God in His capacity and bring forth a harvest. Look at the harvest that wheat brought forth. It sprang up in the very process of having died, that death in the ground, and then it became new life. That much more wheat would come from that one little stalk of wheat. What is the birth of a vision? Have you had a vision lately? Did you have a vision when you were a child? I remember I was a visionary. I had all kinds of visions. All kinds of visions. Visualizing what God intends for my life. That's a tough one. To visualize what God intends for your life. Now, that can be classified as hope. I had a hope in a vision that something was going to come about. I was anticipating. I was expecting God to work out His revealed will in my life, even when it doesn't seem possible. And I still am expecting, even when it doesn't seem possible. The fulfillment of a vision. The motivation to reproduce Christ's character in others as He has done in me. To get that character and to reproduce it so that He could win others, so that He could give others to us, so that we could win souls, so other people would be birthed into the kingdom of God. And that's the ultimate vision. That is what we're supposed to be doing. And as time goes on and we give our life to God and we grow in the Spirit, we can lead others to the same place. God's building program during the death of a vision. His building program goes on. Don't you know that when the walls of Jerusalem were knocked down and they were desolate, before Nehemiah came and built them back up, that there was a time that their vision was dashed, and then Nehemiah comes in, builds the walls back, and their vision comes back up. But during the time he's building the walls, what happens? There's some plaguers come by, and they plague them. And during that plaguing, they're growing spiritually, and they're growing physically. And Nehemiah says, okay, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Y'all got a trowel in one hand and put your weapon in your other hand. And if they come after us, you can beat them with a trowel and cut their heads off with a sword. So the vision came true there. God's building program during the death of a vision. God has a building program even when we think our vision has died. Since God is far more concerned with our becoming like Jesus Christ, and becoming in character, growing in wisdom, and being with Him, doing the works of the Father. Jesus did the works of His Father. Now Jesus is our Father through the Father God, and the time is He's waiting to accomplish this character building. He's working. He's accomplishing character building in each one of us who are Christians. Notice the qualities that we can come up with. We're sure to be developing qualities as we study the Bible and as we work in His works. And during that time, God's patiently, He's patiently waiting on the time when He can put us before a person and we say to that person, "Sir, if you died right now, would you go to heaven?" Wow, what a question. I ask it all the time. I have these little things in my pocket, these little track things that say, "If you died right now, would you go to heaven?" I ask that question. And I say, inside of this little thing tells you how you can know you'd go to heaven. Some people say, "Well, I think so." Well, maybe, or I hope so. That's not the answer. The answer is yes, I will. And that's the answer. And that's faith. That is knowing. Faith is knowing. You say, no, faith is believing. But believing can be knowing too. What He will do. Meekness is yielding. When you're meek to what God would have you do, that's yielding. That's yielding to say to that man or that woman, "If you died right now, would you go to heaven?" We think we have personal rights. The only personal right we have is to follow God and do what He says. That's the personal right. What is self-control? Self-control is controlling that thing. If you can control that, the Bible said no man can tame that thing. It's wild, set on fires of hell, and we have to fight over that. It's not running ahead of God and many, many other things that we do in between. Not running too far behind, not running too far ahead, but staying in an even keel. An even keel. This is why a sailboat has a deep keel. Did you know, you see somebody pulling a sailboat down the road and there's no keel. Why isn't there a keel? Because if it was down, it would scrape the road because it's such a big keel. So they make it to where it goes up into the boat while they're moving it and while it's in transit. But when they get it in the water, they drop that keel. You don't need the keel until you're in the water. Now when you're in the water, you better have the keel of Jesus Christ on your side. And you better have Him deep in the water. Because when you put the sails up, the wind's going to blow hard against you. The wind's going to blow hard against you. The minute you go out in the morning early and you say, "I'm going down there and I'm going to witness down at them gas pumps." You go in and you pay for $5 worth of gas. You don't want to get too much because you're going to another station and get $5 over there. I started doing that back in the 70s. Back in the 70s when gas was cheap, I'd get $1's worth. I'd go and get $1. Pump some gas and witness to people. Then I'd go to another station, get $1 and pump some gas and witness to people. I'd go to another station, get $1, pump some gas and witness to people. You know what that was? That was a vision coming about. I had the vision. I got the $1's worth of gas. I did the witnessing. I cranked the car up. I drove to another station and then put the vision back in work again and saw the results of it. Satan has a building program too. You know what he likes to do? He likes to discourage the program of God. That's what he's doing. He wants to make the vision of it to die. He wants to see the death of that vision that we have. And boy, don't he jump up and kick his heels, and he loves it, boy, when he sees the death of a vision. And so his purpose is to destroy God's work in the life of a Christian man. To make it disappear. The potential for achieving God's work as he can. He tries to make it disappear on us so that we can't achieve God's work. To do this during this time, he comes as an angel of light. Be careful. Be careful of everybody that walks up. Because everybody that walks up might not be the angel of God. He might be an angel of light from the devil. And so he's the one that disguises himself. Do you remember that when the angels of God came to God, and the Bible said, and the devil appeared in the midst, he was there. He came on in. And so he's a deceiver. He'll deceive as many as he possibly can. 2 Corinthians 11 and 14 tells us that he's a deceiver. He prompts us to try our own energy and our own wisdom to fulfill the original vision. He doesn't want us to learn what God would have us do or to follow what God would have us do. So he tries to step in and make some qualities or make some things happen that would make us follow him rather than God. And we'll have conflicting results. If God gives us commission and he's leading us, and we leave his lead and go our way and do it our way, we won't have the same thing. So we've got to be careful we don't do that. What is a classic example? Abraham was a classic example. His wife said to him, "Take my handmaid Hagar and have a child by her." That God must have meant that, because we haven't had a child yet and I'm getting old. She already was over her 70s when God told her she was going to have a child. He didn't give her to a child until she was in her 90s, 20 more years. But he gave her the child when it was impossible. 100% impossible for her to have a child. 100% impossible for Abraham to make her have a child. And they get together and they have a child. The proper child, Isaac. Ishmael has been a problem ever since. The results of Ishmael are still the ones that we're fighting today over in Iraq. We're fighting the Ishmaelites. They were born in a kickative mood, in a killer bee atmosphere, in a killer bee desire. They were born to be warriors and fighters. God said, you will be all of your days, you will be adverse to the average person. You'll be against everybody and everything. And they are. Now, what is God's ultimate purpose for each one of us? He has an ultimate purpose for each one of us. What could that be? That we become more like him on a daily basis. His Son, the Lord Jesus Christ. He wants us to be like him. His purpose is that we reproduce little Christ. Little ones like him that will be like him. In this life, the life that we're living now, so that those around us would see Christ in us. If they don't see Christ in us, we got a problem. Paul traveled as in birth that those whom he worked with different people, would have Christ formed in them. I'm doing a big study right now, word study, word for word in Galatians. And studying word for word, if you've ever done that, study the words. Go back to the Hebrew and the Greek or wherever they come from, and then bring out that word and see how much that word means. Each word can stand on its own 2 feet. In Galatians 4:19, God's purpose, spiritual maturity. He wants every one of us to come to spiritual maturity. Wow. It doesn't matter what your vocation in life is. I was a paint contractor all my life. I became a soul winner, a bus worker, a worker in the church. I never was a deacon, but I always did deacon work. I've always been an unelected deacon. And every time they wanted to elect me a deacon, I would say, no, you're not electing me a deacon. And I didn't get elected a deacon. The difference was that the deacon and I wasn't privy to the private meetings, which was probably good, because I'm an antagonist. I would have antagonized them people slapped to death with questions. What makes you think God would have you go that way? What makes you think God would do that? Have you got a godly reason for what you're talking about? And we have 12 deacons at our church. It's a good thing I'm not the 13th, because they'd have a hard time with me. Because I would really do some probing and some questioning and saying, hey, Phew, are you sure this is God's way? Wow. Our primary life goal should be that of Colossians 1:28, warning every man of hell, warning every man that if he doesn't ask Jesus Christ to forgive him of his sins, come into his heart and save his soul, he will spend eternity in hell. Wow. And then teach every man with wisdom after he's saved how to live that life, that he may present every man perfect. Jesus is going to present every Christian man perfect before the Father, before God, before his Father. And we need to have the mature attitude of a Christian. How long have you been saved? I know people that just got saved have a more mature attitude than some people who have been saved a long time. I know some people have been saved a long time, still smoking their cigarettes. And I know some young people that just got saved, and one of the first things they did was lay them cigarettes down. They saw clearer than the guy who had been saved a long time. And so what it is when God first saves you, he shows you some things, and if you don't get rid of them, they become a plague to you throughout your Christian life. How does God prepare us to accomplish what he wants us to be and have and act? How does he prepare us for that? He allows problems, irritations, wow, no kidding, responsibilities, wow, in our lives, so that we are motivated to search out his word and develop a full potential which he puts within our lives. You'll never get strength in this arm without lifting some weights or working or doing something. If you just sit down and read books all the time and don't ever use this arm, you won't have a muscle. I got a muscle. I use this arm all the time. I got a muscle there. I was grinding yesterday, way up on a ladder, reaching up, grinding, and I ground, and I held that arm until I couldn't hold it another second, but I didn't have time to play around because I had to get it done, so I put it in this arm, which I got a good muscle here. And I did it until I couldn't hold it up no more, until I was so much pain, I couldn't hold it no more, and then I switched it to the other hand until I couldn't stand the pain. I kept doing that because I needed to get it done. It had to be done. It needed to get it done. Are you willing to have a little pain for Christ's sake? Are you willing to suffer a little in the spirit, a little something God has given to us? A certain spiritual aptitude? Wow. The abilities and the capabilities to do some things that he wants done. God knows if he left us to ourselves, many of us would self-destruct. We would develop a small portion maybe and wind up defeated. So he gives us an aptitude that would cause us to have the ability and the capacity which he puts within us. It's one thing to have a battery when you lift the hood of your car sitting there. But that battery has got to have some aptitude. It's got to have some ability to give you some power so that when you turn the key over, boom, the car cranks up and running. That's the same way with us. When God comes and turns the key, do you go in action? If you're somewhere and you pull up and somebody stops you and says, hey, can you give me the direction to so-and-so? You say, yes, I can. First thing I'd like to ask you, though, are you going in the right direction when you die? Here, take one of these and I'll tell you where you hit it. I'll tell you how to get there. And so, be prepared at all times. Be prepared at all times. Be prepared. If you're not prepared, you're not in the right position with God. You must be prepared to accomplish this. All right, the soul. Where is the soul? It's inside of here. I'm a body. See me? I'm a body. I have a soul inside of here. He has also given us a mental emotion that it belongs to our soul. It's in our soul. It's in the, it's called volition. The volitional part of a man is in the soul. And that is your aptitude. Your aptitude gives you the ability and the capacity to fulfill what God would have you fulfill. He's not going to put any more on you than you can bear. And He's not going to ask you to do anything He knows you can't do. So, what is the degree that we didn't develop in the rest is we would experience boredom in our lives. So what about it? What about these people that ask the Lord to save them? They get in, they sit in a church, usually in the back seat, somewhere near the back. I wish the preacher would get done preaching. I wish he's preaching a whole hour today. Usually he only preaches about 35 minutes. Man, is he ever going to get done? Huh? And that's boredom. You're sitting in a church in boredom. But instead of saying, you got it, preacher, that's right. Go, get them, sick us. Sick me. I need that. Yeah. Now, we have this body, and we got to close. We also have been given a physical aptitude, abilities, and capacities. Therefore, in order to direct the motives in developing the rest, God chooses to bring us in our lives certain problems, certain irritations, and give us certain responsibilities that the problems and irritations would put us in the place to where we will take care of the responsibilities. And that's how that is. Well, our time's come and gone. We'll see you next time. Brother Peter, tidbits from the Word. Bye-bye.